Boys, I've been all over the place this year. Moved to New Jersey at the beginning of 2026 and I was on like an 80K downer. Things did not get better when I moved here. Lost $28,000 in January playing some private games, being not very intelligent. But since then I've locked in, quit drinking and playing, and things have been looking up. February, booked an online win of around 16K, just online that month. March, flew to the Bay Area, grinded some live poker, had a lot of success, won about 64K. And then April, didn't really get to document it that much because I couldn't film in Miami where I was at the Hard Rock. Lost around 20K on the trip, but I managed to fly back to Jersey and grind back almost all of that online, booking a small loss in April of around $5,000. And that brings us to May. I've been getting stir crazy, so I decided to book a trip back to the Bay Area to play some live 1020. Here's how it went. See you there.
Coming home again. Do you think about me now and then? Yeah. Do you think about me now and then? 'Cause I'm coming home again.
Alright, about to go play a session at Bay. Tuesday morning. Won 1.6K yesterday, I think. Nice day out. Alright, I'll see you guys at the fucking Bay.
On the flight, ice like the Gretzky's. My diabetes only recognize the best trees. Oh, from debated on to waited on, from hated on to the nigga they put their cake on. 'Cause we are.
Okay, and this next time we're playing some 2-3-5-20 and it folds to me in the low jack and I open up to $60 with ace jack. The hijack player who has been extremely active, I'm talking playing like 80% plus of hands so far, puts in the cold call and everyone else folds. So we're going heads up against what I perceive as an extremely wide range to a flop of ace jack 8 rainbow with around $148 in the middle. We're around 5K effective. Against some players, I would consider betting myself here if they're more passive. But this guy who's just playing a ton of hands, I want to give a little more rope to. Plus, our hand kind of just wants to check raise to get the most money in possible. So I start out with a check. But unfortunately, he checks it back. I think he would have bet most of his 2-pair and strong ace-x on the flop. So, you know, that's kind of what my thinking is of his range going to the turn. Not super strong hands. Turn now rolls off the jack of spades, giving us a full house. You could check here, you could bet. I decided that I was going to bet, my thinking being that there's a lot of hands like offsuit gut shots, for example, queen 10, king 10, king queen, and then these open enders, 9, 10, that he'll have way too many of from pre-flop because I expect him to have a lot of these offsuit combos given how many hands he's playing. And if I check, I don't necessarily know that he'll always bet them, but if I bet, I'm fairly certain he'll call those hands. And additionally, if he has a jack, he might just still raise himself facing a bet. So I bet $120 and he makes the call. Going to a river now with $388 in the middle, and it rolls off the 7 of diamonds, bringing in a 9-10 for a straight. Obviously not worried about a straight, we have a full house, but when I'm just thinking about what his range is and the strong hands he could have, obviously the straight is now included in that range. I actually decided to go for a check here, a little sneaky. My thinking is that he's super wide pre and he's just gonna have like too many of these gut shot hands by the river that he might bluff if he has a hand like king queen, king 10, queen 9 that'll just fold if I bet. And then obviously if he has a jack, he'll bet himself. If he has a straight, he'll bet himself. And if he has a good ace, which he probably would have bet on the flop, but if he has an ace on the river, he might just bet it himself still. So I check, and thankfully he does put in a bet of $300, around 3/4 pot. And I decide to go for the megaphone check jam for $5,000. I know it looks a little crazy on paper, jamming 5K into roughly $688, but the thing is, facing a check jam in theory for this much money, hands like jack X and straights and even weak full houses should just be indifferent. Do I expect a recreational player who's playing 80% of hands to be mixing folds with a hand as good as 9-10 on the river? No, probably not. So when I have the nuts and I expect them to be overcalling versus a jam, I'm just gonna go for the fucking jam. I jam and he goes into the tank and I'm sitting there like, oh my god, please call, man, please call, please call. And unfortunately, he ends up making the fold. Don't know what he had, but I think I like the way I played the hand. Let me know what you think. Are you ever going for this megaphone check jam? Because I did. Okay, in this next hand, we're up against two professionals. We see an open from an under the gun pro to $60. He's a long-time pro, definitely solid, obviously winning. And it folds to low jack, who puts in the cold call, just another professional. And it folds to me on the button. I look down at ace 4 of hearts and decide to put in the squeeze to $300. Around a 5x squeeze size in position here. Folds to the under the gun player, who is the initial raiser, and he makes the call, and the low jack also flats. There's some element of recreational players being in the blinds that would incentivize, one, the low jack to play more flats, so he might have more pocket pairs than you'd expect here. And it also makes my range look a bit different because I'm obviously incentivized to flat some more speculative hands here on the button to play in position to these recreational players. So when I squeeze, it might be perceived as a bit more polar. Anyway, go into a flop now with $900 in the middle, and it comes down queen 9-9 rainbow. So we flop an over with a backdoor flush draw. Checks to me, and I put in a small bet of $300. I think I'm gonna be able to bet fairly high frequency on this board, and I think my hand is an okay candidate to do so. We make him fold. Some hands like ace king off sometimes, ace jack, ace 10. Basically just clean up our outs a little bit, and we still have some backdoor equity with a heart. If I had hand like ace 4 of clubs, I would probably just start with a check here, to be honest. The under the gun player calls, and now the low jack gets out of the way. Expect the under the guns player range to be decently strong here. Probably have some hands like ace queen, king queen, even pocket kings pre, maybe even low frequency pocket aces trap, and then you'll have hands like jacks, 10s, and I would expect them to fold the under pairs beneath the 9. So going heads up to a turn now with around $1,500 in the middle, and it rolls off the 4 of clubs. The under the gun player checks as expected, and we also unblock hands like jacks and 10s, which I expect him to fold, and we make him fold a hand like ace king on the turn, which cleans up some of our outs. Obviously, I can always just be saying clean up my outs and bet every ace here, so it wouldn't be appropriate to just always be barreling a hand like this or a hand like ace 5, for example, but I think it's okay to do sometimes. And my plan is to mostly give this one up on the river, depending on the river. Kind of just expect this player's range to be very strong, and I don't really have blockers to his calling range on the river, which is going to be hands like ace queen, pocket kings, king queen, so I'd rather just triple off a hand like ace king in my shoes. So I bet 1.1k, and he makes the call, hoping for a good river with 3.7k in the middle, and the river rolls off the super brick 3 of diamonds. He checks, and I stick to my plan, remain a little bit disciplined in this triple off, and decide to just sigh and knuckle it back and concede that I'm going to lose almost 100% of the time here. So I check it back, and he shows us pocket kings. So well played to him. His hand is played pretty standard, and my hand is played a little more dicey, but I think also pretty standard. So we lose this 3.7k pot. Nice hand, sir. Okay, in this hand, we see a cutoff open to $60. The button folds. A tighter recreational player in the small blind makes the call, and I look down at 6-8 of hearts in the big blind, and I come along with hopes to play with that absolutely wild player in the straddle. Our wishes come true. The straddle also makes the call. So going 4 ways here to a flop of jack 8 for rainbow with around $240 in the middle. Small blind checks, I check, straddle checks, and now the cutoff bets $100 into $240. The small blind folds, and I think I can probably just fold here low key. Don't have a backdoor flush draw to go with our hand. Don't have a kicker that allows us to redraw against a hand like jack 8. So for example, I'd rather call a hand like ace 8, king 8, queen 8, just hands that have outs versus top pair, and can also improve to hands that beat jack 8. Obviously, so that's wishful, you know what I mean? I would just rather have a kicker above a jack, to be honest. But anyway, I don't really know why, but I ended up making the call in game, and the straddle also makes the call. Well, I know why I made the call in game, because a turn rolls off the 8, and I make a massive mistake and do not donk here. Should absolutely be donking here. I expect the cutoff to massively under bluff the turn and play extremely passively. I just expect the cutoff to check way too much, and I don't expect the straddle to donk like crazy, making me want to start checking. So anyway, I should lead. I don't know. This hand I just played really badly, but I check, the straddle player checks, and the cutoff unsurprisingly now checks it back, which is a disaster because we just missed a street of pot growth with basically the effective nuts versus the straddle player. The river now comes the 10 of diamonds, and I go for a smaller bet of $200. I don't know if I like sniffed Jenkum before I played this hand or if I was like fucking... I should just overbet. I don't know. I mean, I should be trying to play against a guy who's playing ace-5 and putting a lot of money. Or playing ace-5 off and putting in tons of money with it. Like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Like, this is so poorly played. I think my thinking was that I was just worried to think that the cutoff player would like be able to hero fold like top pair or an overpair if I had bet big here. But my focus should really just be on getting the max from the straddle player who's going to be making the most mistakes. So yeah, I played this hand fucking terribly. Anyway, the straddle player now raises to $600 and the cutoff player thinks about it for a while and ends up folding. I mean, against this guy, I'm just never ever consider folding my hand. I was actually think I should think about maybe free-betting the river here, but I end up just making what I think is the standard call. Obviously, we lose to hands like 7-9, Queen-9, that kind of thing for a straight. So we have an 8 with a kicker that doesn't play. If I had a kicker that did play, maybe I would consider 3-betting. But anyway, I just make the call, and we get shown the bad news. He has 9-7 offsuit. So I guess we lost the minimum, but I played this hand like so poorly. It's like embarrassing. I like don't know what I was doing. Anyway, we lose the minimum, but also lose a decent amount of money in this hand, which sucks. But whatever, played it poorly. Roast. We are low-key stuck a decent amount this session, boys. Nothing is really going our way. Not playing extremely well, but you know, some days are like that. Let's see if we can turn around this hand. Folds us in the cutoff, and I look down at ace-queen offsuit and open to $60. The button, the extremely active player, flats, folds to the big blind, who is a... I don't know if he's a pro or not, but he plays a lot, and he's reggy for sure. Makes a call, and the straddle player, who's definitely a pro, makes the call. Going 4 ways to the flop of ace 4 deuce rainbow. Checks to me, and I decide to check to the button, who is the extremely active player. Again, against some more passive players, I would consider checking, but against this guy who is just very in there, I'm going to check, looking to check raise with this hand. So I check, and the button thankfully puts in the half pot bet of $120, and I stick to my plan here. I think some people would get like scared and think maybe ace queen isn't good enough to play for $5,000, but like against this guy, man, when he can have just every offsuit ace that's not going to fold to a huge check raise, you gotta just be ready to put in a ton of money here with top pair good kicker. So I put in the check raise to $900, around 7x check raise, and unfortunately he makes the fold. Thought I'd just include this hand. I don't really know why. I just thought it kind of interesting that you want to like recalibrate how good your hand needs to be to play for stacks based on how wide the people are pre. Sounds really obvious, but I don't know. Thought I'd include it. We win a little bit this hand. Maybe the indication of a comeback starting. Okay, in this next hand, it's about 30 minutes after the last one. Our friend, the super active player, has been going absolutely off the rails. Like, he is 3-betting basically every hand, ISOing basically every hand. So I've adopted a limping strategy. Basically, I'm just, instead of opening, I'm just limping now to limp re-raise. I started doing this one because I think regulars ISO less behind the super active player when I limp, because I think they're kind of scared of just facing a limp raise. So it allows me to limp wider and not get 3-bet as much by regs behind the super action player. And additionally, if I just know the guy's gonna ISO, it lets me play a bigger pot when I have the ability to limp raise. So this time I go for the limp under the gun with queen 10 of diamonds with around 2.5k effective. The active player has lost a few pots, so he no longer has 5k. The active player bumps it up to $260 and it folds back to us. So I actually decided to just go for the limp jam here to 2.5k, and he thinks about it for about 2 seconds and then calls, and I was like, yikes, that's not amazing. But he's also super wide, so I don't know, hopefully we're just flipping. We decided to run it once with $5,000 in the middle, and the flop comes down 3-7-8 rainbow. Not feeling great about queen high on 3-7-8 rainbow, but the turn is a queen, so now I am feeling ecstatic because I think against how wide his range is, a queen is almost always good here. The river's a 5. He looks at me and says sorry, and he rolls over 8-5 suited like an absolute legend and scoops this 5k pot for 2 pair. I like my play pre. I like my adjustment to just limp jam versus the large ISO. I do not like the run out dealer. Do better. Thank you. We're down quite a bit this session. I think we're stuck around 7k at this point. I don't really remember. We were down a lot at one point though. So, yeah. Okay, in this next hand, we look down at king 6 of diamonds in the low jack, and I do my good old-fashioned limp strategy. I put in the limp to $20, and the hijack, the super action player, bumps it up to $60 on the smaller side of his ISOs. Guy just had an RNG in his head that he was using, I guess, to decide which size to ISO, or he must have been randomizing suits or something. I decided to put in the limp 3-bet versus what I assume is an extremely wide ISO. This is, basically just for value. King high is just good against an 100% range. So I put in the limp raise to $600, 10x ISO. He wasn't folding very much to raises, but he was back up to a 5k stack, so I think limp jamming is insane here versus a $60 ISO. Limp making it 2k. I don't know, maybe he starts folding versus 2,000. I don't know. $600 felt big enough in game, but in hindsight, this guy was just never folding, so I probably should have just gone bigger. Anyway, he makes the call, going heads up to a flop with $1,200 in the middle, and it comes down queen 8 for rainbow, and I decided to start out with a small c bet of $320. My plan here on most runouts is just go bet, bet, check. Basically, my thinking is that he's super wide and he's going to float the flop quite wide, and then if I barrel the turn for a larger size, he's going to have shut off most of his air that isn't pocket pairs by the river. He wasn't really just going like call with ace high post flop. That much from what I've seen, I can't really make that statement for sure. But basically, my thinking was I was not trying to make him fold a pair on the river. So my plan is mostly just go bet, bet, check. So I bet the flop for $320, and he unsurprisingly makes the call. I'm going to a turn now with $1,800 in the middle, and it rolls off the 8 of hearts. Definitely not trying to make him fold a pair when the board is paired. Recreational players tend to get more sticky on paired boards because me have 2-pair logic. So I go for a bet that I think will just make him fold hopefully hands like ace 5, ace 6, ace 7, ace 10, ace jack. I mean, ace jack, getting this guy to fold, that seems like a bit of a task. But anyway, I go for a size, mostly just targeting his dust and ace high of $800. And he looks at me for in about 2 seconds and then says all in, and he jams for $4,000. Not much to do here with king high, except kind of sucks because I just lost a bunch of money, but I fold and he shows me an 8. So nice answer. He turned trips and went for the old Remington. And yeah, this guy is really destroying us. Like, we're getting smashed. Yeah. Not much to say. Well, we gotta turn it around and make some value hands. Okay guys, the action player stood up and left, and we ended up combining games with the other table of 10-20 that was running. There was randomly 2 games on this day, which isn't usually happening, but whatever. We ended up merging tables after the action player unfortunately left with my many thousands of dollars that I gave him, but he earned it. So this hand is at the other table now without the action player. Really hoping we can find a way to get unstuck on the day. Not really actually hoping, but like it would be very nice, to maybe make some good hands and not lose 5 figures. In this hand, we look down at queen 8 of hearts in the cutoff, and it folds to us, and I open to $60. And the big blind, a professional, calls, and the straddle, a tighter recreational player, comes along as well. The flop comes down 10, 6, 7, all hearts, so we flop a flush. Very nice when that happens. Checks to me, not going to be doing any checking back to protect myself or some balance shit when there's players in the pot who I think might make mistakes. So I go for a small bet of $60. The big blind, the professional, calls, and the straddle comes along as well. The turn rolls off the 8 of diamonds, bringing in a 4-liner to a straight to a 9, and it checks to me, and I decide to go for a barrel of $300 here with my flopped flush. The big blind gets out of the way, and now the straddle player actually check raises to $1,000. He is on the more passive side. In game, I didn't rule out him doing this with a 9 or a weaker flush, or just a better flush, I guess, but I didn't rule him out doing it with a 9 for value. But I think in hindsight, he probably isn't doing this with a 9, given what I've seen. I don't really know. I wasn't playing very well this day, but anyway, never folding my hand obviously here. I think we can still be ahead of hands like ace 9 off with the ace of hearts, worse flushes, a straight maybe sometimes, like jack 9. Anyway, not folding just yet. I make the call, and now the river rolls off the 6 of clubs, and he checks. Now I really feel like he just had a 9 on the turn, or just like a bluff, or maybe a weaker flush. He had like jack 4, jack 3, or 5 of hearts. I don't know. Something like that. I don't really expect to be beat here very often when he takes this like check raise turn check line. So I put in the bet of 1.5k, kind of just targeting 9x, worse flushes. I don't know. Kind of just whatever he wants to call me with. I just feel like I have the best hand, so I'm value betting. And he starts talking and talking And I'll just show you guys the clip from my buddy Eric Poker's perspective because he started filming.
That's a tough card. I don't think you're bluffing. You, sorry, Mateus. Sorry. These were my cards. Did you have me?
Well, I don't want to show.
Okay, show me.
I'll tell you. I might tell you.
Okay.
I'll tell you. I can show you. Just show. Yeah, just show you. See, I don't want you to yell at me though, okay?
No, did you?
I don't want you to yell at me.
Show on, show off, please.
When he says he doesn't want him to yell at him, that means he's bluffing.
But I just want to ask one question. Why would you bet the river?
Because he knows you have a flush.
Yeah, but he only bet it for 1,500.
Yeah, but he knows you're just.
He eventually makes the fold, and he shows an ace high flush and mucks and says, I know you have a full house or a straight flush. I was like embarrassed to show my hand to him. I showed because he wanted to see it. He's always showing me and he's a really nice guy. But I don't know what happened in this hand. This was one of those hands where I was like, am I missing something? Like, I don't know what happened. But we get this bluff through, I guess. If you want to call it that. He folded the ace high flush. I don't know what I'm doing, man. Okay, in this next hand, we are playing some $40 straddle, meaning the table has agreed to straddle to $40, so the blinds are 2, 3, 5, 20, 40. We see an open from the low jack, a professional, to $100, and it folds to the small blind, who is Mr. Eric Poker, a fellow vlogger who makes the call. And I look down at ace queen off in the $20 straddle, and I put in the squeeze to $600, around 6k effective this hand with the low jack. The low jack puts in the call, and Mr. Eric Poker gets out of the way and folds. So we're going heads up to a flop with $1,300-ish in the middle, and it rolls down queen 8-8 with 2 clubs. I do have the ace of clubs. I start out with a small c-bet of $400, and our opponent, Mr. Ryogi, puts in the small raise to 1k. Not really sure about this one. Not sure what he's saying he has. Yeah, I don't know, but I'm not folding my hand either, so I make the call. Going to a turn now with 3.3k in the middle, and it rolls off the 4 of hearts. Don't see any point in leading here. If he has a hand he's bluffing with, well, so I'll let him keep bluffing. If he has an 8, well, he's getting my stack anyway. So, yeah, I decide to just check, and he checks it back. I think at this point, it's pretty likely he has some type of Queen X hand that was just raising the flop just for protection / denial reasons, I guess. Or he has a hand like Jack 10, maybe, combo draw, a draw, that kind of thing. Not really sure, but I think a lot of the time he just has a similar hand or just some type of draw. I'm not sure. I don't really know what he had, to be honest. But anyway, it goes check, check, and the river rolls off the 8 of spades, giving us a full house. I'm going to have aces and kings from pre-flop. He will not have those hands usually, and I don't think he'll really have them at all when he takes this line of raise flop, check back, turn. So I have a massive nut advantage. I think I could check to bluff catch, but honestly, don't imagine he's going to be particularly thrilled about bluffing this spot too much. Don't really see him like launching it with a hand like Jack 10, because it really just does look like I have a full house a lot of the time when I take the check call or bet, call raise, check, check, turn, and then check river line. I would just bluff a lot of my worst hands myself. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like in his shoes, it's just going to look like he's going to be bluffing into a full house a lot. And I decided that the best play is to just go all in to try and make him fold a chop or potentially just get hero called by somehow him having a worse pair in this line. I'm not really sure. So I jam for 5k into 3.3, and he goes into the tank. I mean, after he's tanking, I'm kind of hoping he folds because I think he has a queen when he's tanking. So yeah, anyway, he ends up taking for like a long time, and he ends up folding. I honestly just have no idea what happened this hand. It was really strange. Don't really get raised on the flop in position super often from regs in these like tighter range spots. So yeah, let me know what you think he had. In this hand, there are 9 players who put in $60 blind. Essentially, we all get 2 cards, and we go to a flop and just play some no limit Texas Hold'em, starting from the flop with $540 in the middle. Flop comes down ace jack 3 all diamonds, and I look down at 6-8 of diamonds in under the gun 1. Checks to me. There's still 5 players left to act behind us. I don't do a ton of betting from earlier positions in bomb pots, so I decided to check, and it checks to the cutoff, who is Mr. Ryogi, the same player from the last hand in the Queen 8-8 board, and he puts in the small bet of $160, folds all the way to me, and I decided to just call this time. My hand would definitely be fine to raise sometimes. I would definitely be raising a lot more of the king high flushes and queen high flushes that can cooler his lower flushes. But yeah, I think it's fine to raise our hand. I mean, we have flop flush. But anyway, I make the call, and we're going to a turn now with $860 in the middle, and it rolls off the 7 of clubs. I check, and our opponent now barrels for $700. Don't see any point in raising here. If he's got a good hand, which he's saying he does, he's going to keep betting, and if he's bluffing, I just want to let him keep bluffing. So I make the call, and we're going to river now, which rolls off the 4 of spades. There's around 2.2k in the middle. We have $4,000 behind. I check, and he announces all in for $4,000, and I actually do think about it for a little bit here. I think we pretty clearly have a bluff catcher when we're facing this very large jam of 4k into 2.2k. Don't really see him taking this line with a hand that's worse than be a queen high flush, but that being said, don't think it's extremely hard for him to be bluffing here. He can just have a lot of offsuit king of diamonds combos, given it's a bomb pot, and you get dealt any 2 cards pre. And obviously, when I have 2 diamonds, it makes it less likely that he has a flush himself. So anyway, I'm sure my hand's a mix in theory, but I decide I'm going to call it this time, and I put in the call, and we get shown the good news. He has king 5 offsuit with the king of diamond. So we scoop this 10.2k pot versus the bluff. Let's go. We're starting to get unstuck because we were fucking buried on the day. But we got through a bluff with a queen high flush, and then we win that ace queen hand, and we just won this very large bomb pot hand. So I believe we were unstuck at this point. Okay, in this next hand, we are still playing with the $40 straddle. We see Limp from under the gun. It folds to the hijack, who's a tighter trying recreational player, and he bumps it up to $160. Actually, I wouldn't say he's tighter, but he's definitely trying, and he's definitely got an idea of what's going on. He ISOs to $160 over the limp, and folds to me on the button. I look down at king queen suited, king queen of spades, and I put in the 3-bet to $500. The original limper gets out of the way and folds, and the hijack now puts in the call. So we're going heads up to a flop of jack 9-4 with 2 clubs with 1.1k in the middle. The hijack checks to me, and with our gut shot into overs, I decided to go for a c-bet of $360, and the hijack player puts in the call. Think he can have 1 pair hands, flush draws, gut shots. His range to be pretty wide. He just called a small c-bet. So I think he would maybe raise hands like jacks and nines at a pretty good frequency, and maybe raise some like combo draws type stuff. So maybe we can decrease those in his range a little bit. The turn rolls off the ace of diamonds, and our opponent checks to me, and I decide to go for the turn barrel of 1.1k. Basically just targeting pairs like 10s, 8s, 9x, jack x, trying to put them in a tough spot. Unfortunately, our opponent doesn't believe us just yet, and he makes the call. I think at this point he can have hands like jack x of diamonds, 9x of diamonds, and then obviously hands like ace x of clubs. Don't think he has a ton of ace x besides ace x of clubs and like ace jack and ace 9. Because I just think he probably would have 4-bet ace king most of the time, and I think ace queen usually just folds the flop, but could be wrong on that ace queen one. Anyway, he makes the call, and the river rolls off the 3 of hearts. He checks to us, and with 2.5k behind. Pretty dicey spot, honestly. But the thing is, I think he might just hero fold some ace x of clubs hands sometimes, like hands like ace 5, ace 10, and I think he'll just always fold hands like jack x of diamonds, so king jack, queen jack, jack 10, that kind of hand. And if he did get sticky with a jack x hand that didn't have flush draw to go with it on the turn, I think he'll fold it on the river. Basically what I'm saying is I do expect a slight overfold from this player in particular, but who knows, could be wrong. I just decided to go with my read that he would maybe overfold this river, and I went all in for 2.5k, and he eventually makes the fold. Sorry, I'm not very good at like this building up the energy thing, so I don't know, that's like not really how I play poker or think about poker. I know some people like the more entertaining vlog style of being like, and then he's in the tank, and it's like some heart beating noise, and then he makes the fold. But I don't know. That's just not really. I tried to do that like once or twice, and it just like felt like I was trying to make it seem like I was in some fucking James Bond movie when I'm really just like some greasy 10-20 reg jamming the river for 2.5k with money that, yes, it sucks to lose the pot, but it's not like I'm gonna be fucking sleeping under a bridge or something if I lose this pot. So yeah, I don't know. Sorry if I'm not giving you guys enough emotion. Is what I'm trying to say, but I don't really feel like fucking. Anyway, I'm yada yada. I'm next hand. Okay, in this last hand, we are playing some 2, 3, 5, 20, 40. So the $40 straddle is on, and this is against the same player as the last king queen suited hand we played. Small blind opens up to $120, and I look down at ace king off in the big blind, and I put in the 3-bet to $400, and our opponent makes the call. Again, this is the same player as we were against in that king queen of spades hand. Anyway, we're going heads up to a flop of king 7-4 with a flush draw. Our opponent checks to me, and obviously top pair, good kicker. Just going to be putting in the c-bet against this player. No reason to do anything else. So I bet $300, and our opponent makes the call. Not going to narrow his range too much, but I think he'll have some pairs, some flush draws, maybe some ace high, that kind of thing. Obviously, our hand is just good enough to play for stacks, so I am going to be barreling most turns. Turn rolls off the 3 of spades, bringing in 2 flush draws and also bringing in 5-6 for a straight. Definitely one of those turns I am still going to be barreling. There's just way more worse hands than there are hands that beat us, aka we have a clear value bet on the turn. So our opponent checks, and I stick to my plan and value bet for 1.2k, around like 70-ish% pot, and our opponent makes the call. I think at this point he'll have some ace high flush draws, worse king x, maybe some stickier hands like 7-6, 4-5. That definitely call sometimes in theory, with the straight draw and still beating bluffs. So anyway, you can have those kinds of hands. Going to a river now with 3.8k in the middle, and I'm going to jam most brick rivers, but probably not flush completing ones. And unfortunately, the river rolls off the jack of clubs, so it is one of those flush completing ones, and our opponent checks. The other hand might jam sometimes. The thing is, I do expect this river to be overfolded, meaning that I think hands like king queen are supposed to mix, maybe some hands like 6-7. Jesus Christ, I'm 24 years old. I can't be fucking doing that. But anyway, maybe I'm meant to get in there in theory a little bit. And anyway, if you expect the river to be overfolded, by a hand like king queen, for example, which is one of the main hands we'd want to get called by when we have ace king, doesn't really make sense to jam for thin value if you're supposed to go overfolded. So yeah, I decided to check back, and thankfully I did, because he rolls over the old 10-7 of clubs for the 10 high flush. So yeah, we ended up losing this 3.8k pot, but kind of lost the minimum, I guess. Anywho, let me know how you think I played that hand. Alright, well, I just put a session where I somehow went from minus 11k to plus 1.7, maybe minus 12k at one point. I don't even fucking know. That game was fucking out of control there. I played like a retard for a lot of it, but I didn't tilt really. I was just playing bad, which is, I don't know which one's worse, so whatever. Fun game though. I ate 2 burgers, steak tacos, ordered coconut pudding. So there's I'm gonna shit my pants, and I didn't want to use the bathroom because I was fucking trying to get unstuck. So yeah, now I just feel disgusting, but I'm unstuck. But I hope you guys enjoyed that session regardless. About to get in my car and then go sleep. Surfing tomorrow, gonna be fun. Peace, boys. I got here a little early to Santa Cruz, but it's 1 o'clock. Going surfing for the 2nd time ever. Terrified of sharks, but I'm trying to learn more things this year. Do more shit outside the poker room, so here we are. We'll see how it goes. Wish me luck. Good luck, us. Okay, in this first hand we're playing some 2-3-5-20, around 5k effective. We see an open from a good under the gun professional to $60, and it folds to me in the big blind, and I look down at ace king off. When you're this deep with offsuit combos in a tight configuration, you're mostly just going to be flatting, so I make the standard call, and the straddle player behind us folds. Going heads up to a flop now with $140 in the middle, and it comes down king 7 deuce rainbow, so we flop top pair, good kicker on a very dry board. Feeling good about our hand, I start with a check, and our opponent now starts off with the pretty standard, roughly 35% pot bet for $50. We're too deep to want to pile in money with a hand like top pair, good kicker. And in general, I just don't think I'm going to be playing many raises on this board, and if I was, it'd probably be built around hands like 7s and deuces for value. So I start off with just the call. Going heads up to a turn now with about $240 in the middle, and it comes down to the 4 of clubs, pretty bricky card. I check, and our opponent now barrels for $180, roughly 2/3 pot. Not really sure about this size, kind of feels like a spot where your value just wants to go bigger. Hands like ace king, aces, king queen are probably good enough for a size like pot plus, so like $240. Still a little confused about what he's saying he has, kind of feels like a hand like king jack or king 10, or he's just bluffing. Don't see much point in raising our hand, not like I can raise the turn and then pot the river for value, and if he's bluffing, I just want to let him keep bluffing. So I make the call. Going to a river now, and it rolls off the jack of clubs, bringing in a backdoor flush. I check, and our opponent now bets $540, around 90% pot. Just not really considering folding given what I said on the turn, how I don't really believe the size necessarily. If he has a hand like aces, nice hand to him, and if he has a backdoor flush, I would expect him to maybe go a little bit bigger. So I feel like he's kind of repping a narrow value range for this spot, and it's not super hard to have bluffs here. So I make the call, and we get shown the good news. He has ace queen off with the queen of clubs for the bluff, and we scoop this 1.7k pot. Look down at ace 4 of clubs under the gun, and I open to $60, and it folds to the big blind, who's a more passive recreational player, and he puts in the 3-bet to $240. The straddle player folds, and it's back on us, and you know, it's pretty awesome when I say the guy's a passive player, and then I make the call with a speculative hand. But the thing is, we're deep. He didn't 3-bet to a very large size. If we were shallower, I would definitely fold. But yeah, we're deep and I have a suited ace. I'm not folding. So I make the call, and we're going to a flop of 10-6-3 rainbow with 1 club, around $500 in the middle, and our opponent now bets $120. Very small size. I have an over, backdoor flush draw. I can certainly bluff him on future streets, given I don't think he's very strong when he takes this size. I expect him to go bigger with a good hand. So yeah, feeling fine about our hand, and I make the call. Going to a turn with $740 in the middle, and it's the turn 4 of diamonds, so we turn a pair, and our opponent now continues betting for $460, a little over half pot, like 60% pot. You know, I'm not super sure what he's saying he has. Think he can definitely be bluffing with hands like ace king, ace queen, ace jack, king queen, who knows. And I think for value, he might go bigger if he had aces, kings, queens, or jacks. So, you know, maybe he has some like pocket nines, 10x, doesn't really want to like check, face a big bet. I don't know, that kind of thing. But I'm not folding when I make a pair and still have an out to an ace, that kind of thing, if he does have an over pair. So I make the call, and the river comes down the jack of hearts, and our opponent bets $600, so a little more than a third pot. I really don't know what he's saying he has. We're getting a good price is the thing, so I think calling is winning. I think folding is kind of out of the question at this point, just given it's not very hard to have a bluff. I don't really know what he's saying he has for value. The thing is, I think raising could be the best option, because in the case that we do lose to some mergy 10x, pocket nines, or maybe even like a river hand like king jack, queen jack, I think we can maybe get him to fold that kind of hand if we go all in. So I decide that all in is going to be the highest EV option in game, given I don't think he has a super good hand that often. I think he can certainly be bluffing, but I also think I can lose sometimes when I call. So I decided to go all in for $4,000, around 3.4k on top of his bet, and he starts talking.
Straight? Oh, well, you have straight, you would.
He asked me if I have a straight. Not really loving to hear when a guy says, do you have a straight in a 3-bet pot, when the only thing I can have for a straight is 5-7, which I would never have. And that also makes me think he has a hand that's pretty good, because why are you thinking about straights if you have a hand that loses to sets or something? So I don't know what he's saying he has. Anyway, he thinks for about 20 seconds and eventually makes the call, which really blows, and he rolls over pocket jacks for top set. Not sure about my reads, not sure what just happened, but obviously we lose this pot, and this player scoops 9.6k. Nice hand, sir. You absolutely max fucked me. Okay, in this next hand we look down at 10-9 of spades under the gun, and we open to $60, and it folds to a recreational player in the big blind who's around 4k effective, and he makes the call, and the straddle player folds. So we're going heads up to a flop with around 140 bucks in the middle, and it comes down 8-3-4 with 2 spades. So we flop 2 overs and a flush draw, but the big blind decides to now lead for $60. Don't think he has a super strong hand. When he does this, just in general, smaller donks are just not incredibly strong hands usually from my experience. If I had a weak hand that wouldn't be able to call a turn barrel, a hand like king 6 of diamonds, for example, that wouldn't always be able to call turn barrels, I'd probably just start raising on the flop, because my hand just kind of doesn't really do well facing future aggression, and I think I can just raise and win the pot a lot, or raise and then barrel the turn and win a lot. But if he bets the flop and then bets a turn big, and I have a hand like king 6, well, it's gonna be pretty hard for me to continue, and I'm not really gonna want to start like raising versus bigger turn barrels with that hand. But when I have a hand that can easily face aggression over multiple streets, I don't mind just calling. So I make the call, and the turn comes down the 5 of diamonds with around $260 in the middle, and the big blind checks to us. Honestly, I have 10 high. I don't think he has a very good hand, and I think I can just bluff and win a lot of the time by the river. So I decide to start bluffing, and I bet $160 with plans on barreling on literally every single river. Can't really think of a single river where I would check. And the big blind makes the call. So going to a river now with $580 in the middle, and I think at this point he's just gonna have a lot of one pair hands, like maybe 8x, 5x, 4x, 3x, that kind of thing. Don't really think he has better than top pair very frequently in this line. River rolls off the deuce of clubs, so it brings in any ace first straight and any 6 first straight, and the big blind checks to us. So a couple things going on here. One, I think he might have led occasionally if he had an ace or a 6. You know, given he's playing leads on the flop, he might less lead stronger hands on the river, so that makes me feel better about bluffing. And 2, I think we can just go a size where we make him fold basically everything but the few straights that he might have. So I go for a bet of $500, basically just targeting any 1 pair hands I think I can get them to fold. Could maybe even go a little smaller, like $400, but honestly, I don't think he has a straight super often, and I think he's just gonna fold a lot of the time to this size, so I think it's just pretty good in general. He makes the fold, and we scoop this $580 pot. Let me know how you think I played it. In this hand, we look down at pocket 8s in the big blind, and it folds to the small blind, a long-term pro, and he opens up $75, and I put in the 3-bet to $245, and he makes the call. Going heads up to a flop with around $510 in the middle, and it comes down deuce 3 5 with 2 diamonds. Checks to me, and I go for a half pot bet of $240, and he makes the call. You know, decently wide configuration. You'll have a lot of 1 pair hands, a lot of 4x hands, some flush draws, some ace high with backdoor flush draw, king high with backdoor flush draw even, that kind of thing. Still pretty wide range. Going heads up to a turn now with $990 in the middle, and it rolls off the queen of hearts. He checks to me, and I think this is going to be a really high frequency barrel for my range on the turn, which is what I'm worried about playing when I'm playing against a pro. I'm just kind of trying to play my range pretty well unless I have a good reason to deviate. So in game I figured this would be a pretty high frequency barrel for me, because he'll fold a lot of his queen X on the flop. I'll retain more of it. So when it rolls off a queen, it's pretty good for me because I make more top pair and my over pairs are still pretty strong on the turn. So when he checks, I decide to barrel for 60% pot for $600. And my thinking is we can still get called by hands like 4x, 6x, worse pocket pairs than us, ace high diamonds, and we just make him fold sometimes hands like king jack, king 10 of clubs, ace high clubs that called the flop, that kind of things. Hands that still have equity against us, we don't mind those hands folding on the turn because our hand just doesn't bluff catch rivers insanely well. If I'd hand like pocket jacks or pocket 10s that needed slightly less protection, I would consider checking those hands back, but I think just 8s just benefits enough from denial and still gets called by enough worse hands that it's okay to barrel on the turn. So I bet $600 and our opponent makes the call. The river rolls off the ace of diamonds and our opponent now gets out the donk lead. He bets $800. I think he's basically just saying he has a hand like maybe rivered 2 pair or straight plus. I think that's probably the bottom of his value range. So in game, I'm considering all 3 options of raising, calling, and folding. I basically immediately rule out raising here, mostly because I think if I were to jam, hands like 4x should be indifferent, and I think it's just like way too easy for players to just end up side calling straights in this spot. It's not incredibly hard for them to give me bluffs. Hands like kings, queen x, jack x with a diamond, you don't have to be a genius to find some flush blocker bluff here. So I rule out raising pretty quickly, and I'm just trying to figure out if I want to call or not. And I decided that call isn't really great either. My hand probably kind of just blocks bluffs, and maybe we even occasionally lose to a bluff like pocket 9s or pocket 10s with the diamond if it decides to take this line. So I just stick with what I think is probably the standard fold, and I lay it down. And our opponent later told me he had a straight. Who knows if it's true, but anyway, we make the fold and we lose this 2.2k pot. Let me know what you think. Sorry, kind of a long hand history there. Okay, in this next hand we're playing some 2, 3, 5, 20, 40, so the $40 straddle is on, and it folds to me in the cutoff, and I look down at pocket 7s and I open $220, and we see a 3-bet from a recreational player who I haven't played with before to $360, smaller size, 3x, never folding my hand. So I make the call, going to a flop heads up with $785 in the middle, and it rolls down king 5-8, a rainbow. He starts out with a $260 bet, and I think we just have the best hand a good amount of the time. I'm not going to be folding, backdoor straight draw, that kind of thing. Yeah, not folding my hand versus this size. So I make the call. See a turn 3 of spades, and our opponent now barrels for $660, a little less than half pot. Not incredibly convinced about the strength of his hand when he takes this size. Yes, we could still be losing to obviously hands like king X and maybe queens and jacks that barrel for this size, but I still think we have the best hand a good amount of the time, and versus an unknown player who's been decently active, I'm just going to call one more street and then evaluate the river based on his size. So I make the call, and the river rolls off the 5 of diamonds, and he now checks, and I think we have a pretty clear check back. Yes, it kind of sucks sometimes when we lose to a hand like queens or jacks, but not even sure those hands would fold if I decided to bluff here. So I check it back, and we get shown the good news. He has 6-9 suited, big lick for the missed gut shot that he decided to barrel and turn. You know, obviously some stuff going on pre, but whatever, I'll give it to him. He's in the streets. Anyway, we scoop this 2.6k pot. The reason I include hands like this, by the way, is because I think people love to fucking fold versus small bets, which you really shouldn't be doing that often. Keep folding the small bets, buddy. See where it gets ya. Okay, in this next hand, we are up against the same player as the pocket eights donk hand. And we see him open from the small blind to $65 and folds to me in the straddle, and I look down at Jack 9 offsuit, and I make the defend. Going heads up to a flop of 10, 7, 8. So I flop the absolute nuts. There's around $135 in the middle, and he checks to us, and I start out with a roughly 1/3 pot bet of $50. Just the only size I'd be playing here. And our opponent makes the call. I think he'll just have some ace high, jack X, that kind of thing. Just wide range spot, yada yada. Just some pairs, whatever. Just not going to narrow his range too much after just calling one street. But I do think he lacks nutted hands, I will say that. So going to a turn now, $235 in the middle, and it comes down the 5 of clubs, bringing in a backdoor flush draw. He checks, and I decide to go for the overbet of $360 here. Basically, the bottom of my value range here, I think, would be a hand like Jack 10. Would be the worst hand I would bet here for this size. So yeah, pretty much top pair plus. And our opponent now makes the call. So going heads up to a river with $955 in the middle, and it comes down the jack of hearts, and our opponent now decides to donk lead for 1.2k, around 120% pot. I go into the tank here. Don't think anyone's thinking about folding here. The question is, what does he really have? You can obviously have a 9. You'll have a lot of 9x in this line, but the thing is, I will have way more queen 9 offsuit than him. Don't even know if he opens queen 9 off from the small blind with 2 players behind him. And second off, I don't think he really has it in this line very frequently. When he check calls the flop and then check calls the turn, I think that hand mostly bets the flop, and if it doesn't, it probably just check raises a lot and probably doesn't check call the turn super often. So anyway, I have a huge queen 9 off advantage, so I decide to leverage that advantage, and I go all in for my remaining $5,500. We're a little deeper to start the hand, and he basically just trying to put a ton of pressure on his 9x hands, which I think should probably be indifferent at this point facing a jam this big. Anyway, it doesn't really matter because he snap folds, so I guess he was bluffing. I think his line's pretty sus. Don't really think there's any merit to having a big lead in a spot where I have a significant nut advantage on the river, and we probably have an equal amount of straights. So yeah, not really sure about that hand, but think you need to find the jam on the river here as in position, because you should be trying to make them fold chops very frequently when you have way more queen 9 off than they will. Anyway, kind of interesting hand. We scoop this 3.3k pot. Let me know what you think. Okay, this next hand is against popular poker vlogger Eric Poker. He also plays at Bay 101 sometimes, and he was kind enough to share the footage with me from his POV. So we're gonna play it from my perspective, but also toggle back and forth between his perspective, and then we'll reveal his hand at the end. So in this hand, I look down at ace jack offsuit in the small blind, and I open to $60, and it folds to Eric in the straddle, who makes the call. Going heads up to a flop of ace 6 8 with 2 hearts. I have a jack of hearts, and I start off with a small bet of $50, and he now raises to 160. I think his raise size is okay, probably totally fine. I think you probably want to play a bigger size, mostly polarizing to very good ace X and 2 pair plus, that kind of thing. That'd be how I would probably play, but I think his size is fine. I think our hand is a pretty clear just call. We're ahead of all the bluffs, and we probably beat or chop with some value when he takes a smaller size. So I make the call. Bluffs aren't very hard to find, by the way. Gutters, 5-7, 4-5, flush draws, backdoor flush draws, whatever, you name it, that kind of thing. Anyway, I make the call, and the turn is now the 8 of diamonds with around $445 in the middle. I'm sure the solver would play some leads here or something. I'm not going to do it because I have no idea how to play leads, but basically the thinking is that after he raises the flop, he's going to have less 8x. When I call the flop, I'm going to have more 8x. I'm just going to be more concentrated around that when I check call than he is when he raises, but whatever. That's some theory shit. Don't think it really matters if you play leads here or not. I decide to check, and he now barrels for $500, which is about pot. And now at this point, he's definitely saying he has a hand that can beat ace king, I would say, when he takes this size. I'm not super convinced. I think there's a lot of bluffs to choose from here, like I said on the flop, and I am going to make him play one more street for sure. So I make the call. Going to river now with 1.5k in the middle, and it comes down the queen of spades, and I check, and he now bets 2k into 1500, around 135% pot. I don't know, math's not my strong suit. Anyway, I think at this point he's saying he has an 8. I think our hand's indifferent. strikes me as a probably under bluffed spot. So this time I just give him some credit and make the fold. And we see the good news. He had queen 8 off for the full house. That was kind of merge bluffing on the flop, and then just ended up backdooring the absolute world. In these spots, you know, when it feels very close, I just like to think generally over bluffed or under bluffed. If I lean under bluffed, I lean fold. If I lean over bluffed, I lean call. Some of these spots you kind of just gotta go with your gut when it feels really close and there's no clear answer. So I made the fold this time and we were correct, but you know, sometimes you're wrong there. It is what it is. It's a close spot. Okay boys, in this next hand it folds to us on the button with ace 3 of diamonds, and I open to $60 and the straddle a reg defends. Going to a flop of king 7-4 rainbow with 1 diamond, and our opponent checks to us, and I start out with a roughly 40% pot bet of $50, and our opponent now busts out the check raise to $180. Think for value, king queen plus, probably not raising king queen that often if you're him, just because it's not a hand that doesn't really want to stack off, so usually better hands than that, so 2 pair sets, that kind of thing. Anyway, I think with 1 over backdoor flush draw and a backdoor straight draw, it's a little devious peel, but I decided to make the peel with some probably retarded intentions on future streets. So I make the call, and the turn rolls off the jack of hearts with around $488 in the middle, and it's time to use those devious intentions because he checks, and I decide to start bluffing my hand. I go for the stab of $220, smaller size, but generally when someone check raise checks, they're considered polar, which basically means a lot of time they'll just have snap folds of trash and then very clear continues of call or raise. So yeah, you can kind of use like the small size to attack that trash range, yada yada. I don't even fucking know if what I just said is correct, but whatever. I use a small bet in this spot, so I bet small, and our opponent makes a call. When he takes this line, I'm kind of thinking as a hand like king queen or king 10 that probably shouldn't have raised the flop, and now he's like, oh, why'd I raise? I didn't want to put that much money in, and now I'm in an awkward spot. And I could have just check called, but yeah, you're here, buddy, now. So anyway, that's what I think he has a lot when he takes this line. So he makes a call, and going to a river with $928 in the middle, and the river comes off the 8 of clubs, and he checks to us with $928 in the middle, and I decide to go for the overbet of 1.5k, so about 150% pot, basically saying I have a hand like 2 pair plus, which is very credible for me to have in this line. It's actually like not that easy for me to be bluffing. I'd have to float the flop with a hand like mine and then just start bluffing and blasting off the turn, because hands like 5-6 got there. I could have a hand like king jack, pocket jacks, pocket sevens, pocket fours. Just have a ton of value in my spot, and to be bluffing appropriately, you kind of just got to be floating and then starting to stab a good amount. And luckily this time we had the hand to do it. But he goes into the absolute tank. He's thinking. I was basically targeting a hand like king 10, king 9, king queen when I bet, and he ends up making a fold. So let me know what you think he had, but we scooped this $928 pot. All right, in this next time we're playing some 2-3-5-20. It folds to us in the big blind, and we look down at pocket deuces, and I open to $60, and the straddle, a long-term professional, makes the call. Around $120 in the middle, we're going to a flop of king, queen, jack with 2 diamonds, and I start out with a smallish bet of $60, and the straddle player makes the call. I think he'll just have a lot of 1 pair, maybe some gut shot type hands, maybe some flush draws, you know, just facing 1 small bet, so his range is going to be wide in these positions. Going to a turn with $240 in the middle, and it comes down the 4 of hearts. You know, our hand still wins against some hands like ace 8, ace 9, just ace high, backdoor flush draws, that kind of thing. Doesn't really have great properties for barreling, so I decide to check, and our opponent checks it back, and the river comes down the 6 of spades. Here's where I think I make a mistake. I decide to turn my hand into a bluff, when I think in reality our hand just has a bit too much showdown value to be bluffing. We still beat hands like ace 9, ace 8 that floated the flop. Yeah, honestly not much besides that, which is kind of why I decided to bluff, because my thinking was also that even if we do have the best hand, he's just going to bluff us a lot when he has a hand that's worse than ours. So in game I decided that bluffing was probably better than checking, and I went for the overbet of $360, basically saying I had a hand like king 5, king 8, king 7, or even pocket 6s, that kind of thing, that check the turn, and is now going for the overbet line. And I honestly don't think it's the worst thing ever in live poker, just poker in general, when, you know, you feel like your hand shows down but loses a lot of time to turn your hand into a bluff. But, you know, that being said, I don't know that this is necessarily the spot for it. Definitely not hard for him to think we have a lot of bluffs here. I given it's a wide range spot. So yeah, I went for the overbetting game, and you know, if I'm sighing, that means he probably called, which he did. He makes the call, I say you're good, and he just shows us a king, and I mucked my hand. I don't think it's necessarily the worst thing ever. In theory, they're probably meant to mix calls with hands like Queen X and Jack X on the river, which I don't know that they do often enough, so maybe bluffing is good, maybe it's bad, who knows, whatever. This time we're wrong. We lose this $960 pot. Okay, it was getting very late into the night, and my camera had died at this point, so it was charging. So unfortunately, I wasn't recording, but this hand is against our buddy Eric Poker, who was recording, so this hand will be played from his POV. So let's walk through it from his POV. We're playing some 2, 3, 5, 20, 40, so the $40 straddle is on, and it folds to the cutoff, who is our boy TC. It wins to $120, and I put in the 3-bet to $500. And now Eric Poker looks down at ace queen off under the gun and puts in the spicy 4-bet bluff to 1.1k. TC gets out of the way and it folds back to me, and I make the call. So we're going heads up to a flop of queen 3-4 with 2 spades and 1 diamond. I check, and now Eric Poker puts in the bet of 1.1k, roughly 40% pot, and I go for the check jam. Eric thinks about it for a little bit here with ace queen. I think he's kind of afraid I have a hand like aces, you know, which I could certainly have, but I check jam the flop. Not always, but definitely sometimes. And I think Eric just perceives the spot as under bluff, so he tanks for a little bit, but eventually he's never folding his hand. He has top pair, good kicker, and a 4-bet pot with a $40 straddle on. We're only 100 big blinds effective, so he eventually makes the call, and we decide to run it once in this 9.7k pot. The board runs out brick, and I say you're good, because my moronic ass had 5, 6 of hearts. Decided to check bluff jam versus his 40% pot c-bet. Is it a good play? I don't know. I think our hands are kind of cuffed when he takes like the larger size on the flop, but probably kind of spewy because I think his larger size is probably a little overly weighted towards good hands. But anyway, me have equity, 4-bet pot, me face big bet, me no wanna face big bet, so me jam, I think was kind of my caveman logic in game, and we got scooped. So we ended up losing quite a bit on the day. I believe I will put the results up on the screen, but I think it was something like minus 6k. Tough day. Played okay, I think. Anyway, lot of poker left to be played on this trip, so I will see you guys in the next session. Okay, boys, it's been a few weeks since I got back from Bay 101. I won about 45k on that trip. Unfortunately, I didn't get to film all the sessions I played. I actually barely filmed while I was there. I really just don't enjoy filming and playing. And yeah, I'd much rather just like focus on playing poker, especially when the money is meaningful to me. So unfortunately, I didn't really get to film any sessions. I'm sorry about that. But I did get back to Jersey a few weeks ago, played a private game in the city, won a few $1,000s there, and vlogged that, so that'll be up soon. And I also won about 24k online in May, bringing my monthly total for May to plus 76.2k. Obviously, very good month, one of the better ones of my career, and feels amazing after going through that horrible downswing, worst downswing of my career to start the year. I was filled with a ton of self-doubt. Really not liking how I was conducting myself, honestly not really liking myself at some point there. Yeah, it was just like probably like not one of the better periods of my life, honestly. I didn't feel like, but times are getting better, and I'm enjoying poker, I'm enjoying being in Jersey, I'm enjoying the direction things are going, so really appreciate you guys watching. Again, sorry I don't film more or post more, but YouTube's kind of just like a side thing for me. Maybe that'll change in the future. If you want to change, leave a like and subscribe. That really helps. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Put some graphs and shit on the screen. And I'll see you guys in the next video, hopefully sooner than the gap between this one and the last one. Peace.
Do you think about me now and then? Yeah. Do you think about me now and then? 'Cause I'm